Man, remember when cell phone gaming was good? Neither do I, but we've come a long way from that trial version of Bejeweled that came pre-installed on your phone that you just played over and over while you were waiting in the car, waiting to pick someone up. When you think of cell phone games today, odds are you think of the countless gachas that plague these stores, but there was a time when publishers, big name publishers like Epic Games and Square Enix, used to publish full games exclusive to phones that you could purchase with a one-time fee rather than subscribing to some service or paying microtransactions. These days, Epic is too busy suing everyone, and Square is too busy pushing out overpriced ports of 30-year-old games that they released 20 times already, and they already gave away for free in the past. Did you know they gave away Final Fantasy 1 and 2 for free? Now they want, what, $12 for their pixel remasters? But when touchscreen gaming was still relatively young in the early 2010s, Square published Chaos Rings, a turn-based RPG that you could play for a few minutes at a time, or a few hours if you had time to burn. It was simple to play, not too time-consuming. Perfect for cell phones. Of course, being a cell phone game, it also couldn't compare to full-blown console titles. It didn't really have the depth needed to keep you coming back for more. So once you beat the campaign, that was it. At least until the prequel and sequels came out. Despite being rather obscure nowadays, Chaos Rings was popular enough at one point to spawn a series of 4 games. But if you didn't play these games back then, you probably never heard of this series, because Square tried to shove Chaos Rings under the rug. It turns out that Apple and Android operating systems are terrible platforms when it comes to game preservation. Their firmware updates have a nasty habit of breaking games. In 2017, Apple rolled out one of their worst updates ever, iOS 11, an update that prevented any app from the App Store from running unless they were updated to 64-bit architecture. Naturally, plenty of smaller developers opted to just remove their games from the store rather than putting in the time and effort in testing their apps to work on these newer phones. Cave is a Japanese developer known for creating some of the best shmups ever made, and they had their entire library completely wiped from both the iPhone and Android phones because of compatibility issues. In the years since, they've updated some of their apps, but in the case of Bug Princess 1 and 2, these games were never updated, and the only legal way to purchase and play these games in the US is now completely gone. Infinity Blade, I'm sure you've heard of this one, once one of the fastest selling games on the App Store, was removed in 2018, also because of compatibility issues, but you could at least still re-download the game if you already purchased it. At least up until Epic sued Apple, and Epic's developer account was banned, permanently removing any ability to re-download the games, even if you purchased them. This brings us to Square Enix, publisher of Chaos Rings. In 2016, they removed Chaos Rings 1, 2, and Omega from every single digital store, citing compatibility issues. Chaos Rings 3 received a physical release on the Vita in Japan and Asia, and the digital version is still available for download worldwide on phones, but the first 3 games have been unavailable for 7 years at this point. These games were even pulled from the PSN on the Vita, and yes, the PSN is still functional on the Vita to this day, and you can purchase PlayStation 1 games released back in the 90s, but not Chaos Rings. If you want to play these games, you don't have a choice. You have to pirate and emulate them. That is your only option, even if you bought them on your iPod Touch back in 2010. You can't play them today unless you still have that same 14-year-old Apple product and you never updated the firmware. And how many people can claim that they even have a functioning Apple product that's over a decade old? People have come to accept that when it comes to mobile games, they have an expiration date. Gachas condition people to spend thousands of dollars on these images that will eventually be taken away from you. And of course, no refunds, never will you get a cent back. Compare this to the couple of bucks you dropped for Infinity Blade or Chaos Rings, and sure, it's not a huge financial loss, but why are we in this situation where we're losing games permanently in the first place? You know, if you take an old NES or Atari cartridge out of your closet, and you pop that sucker in your console, it will still function today 35 years later. These things were built to last, and you paid big bucks for these games back then, so they damn well better. But today, if you're a Nier fan, and you want to experience more of that world by playing Nier Reincarnation, you're out of luck. Square ended service on April 29th, 2024. There's no offline version because the game is tied to online servers. And of course, there's a financial reason for this. These gachas rake in big money. In the world of cell phone gaming, most people flock to whatever's new and shiny. They want to be where the cool kids are. They want to talk about what everybody else is talking about. So Square's gonna pump out another gacha any day now, and to rake in millions, they need to sunset their older games to bring that audience over to whatever new shit they're putting out there. Games like Chaos Rings, these mid-budget one-time purchases, they don't fit into this formula. They're not easy enough to make to push out there like their gachas, and they don't have the budget necessary to be a satisfactory console release. They had their niche in the early 2010s, but those days are gone. Gaming trends push games like these out of the picture, and rather than update them for the handful of fans that still exist, Square's content to treat Chaos Rings like they do their dead gachas. They don't exist. They never existed. They're gone. Just forget about them. And the same can be said for handheld game systems like those from Sony and Nintendo. With the rise of cell phone gaming, there just isn't a demand for a dedicated handheld device these days. When the Vita released, it tried to fill a niche, console quality gaming on the go. Turns out, there really isn't a huge market for shitty ports of console games like Borderlands 2 or XCOM. Yeah, they run, technically, but most people play their handheld systems at home, on the couch or on the bed, and they turn to their cell phone when they're on the go. And if you're home, why would you play a worse version of a game that you can already play on your console or PC? That is why the Vita failed. People have gone through all these speculations and theories throughout the years, but the truth is that nobody wants to play inferior ports on a tiny screen with fewer buttons. All the larger studios pulled away from the Vita after a few years to focus on consoles where they can make the same games and charge $60 instead of $40. Now the 3DS is a bit of an outlier, seeing that it was a huge success in the era of cell phone games. And that's because Nintendo had rock-solid franchises that it used to support the system. Games like Fire Emblem and Pokemon. These weren't compromised experiences on the 3DS. They were full-blown games designed from the ground up to work on the system. And you couldn't get them anywhere else. But Nintendo knew that they couldn't compete with cell phones for long. So they started throwing Mario and Pokemon on them. And they merged their mainline console with their handheld line to create the Switch. Console quality gaming at home. And if you want to take it on the go, you can. Sounds perfect, right? But there's a catch. You see, the Switch doesn't offer console quality gaming at home. It's a handheld masquerading as a console. You can't tell me with a straight face that games like Pokemon Scarlet and Deadly Premonition 2 are console quality games. And guess what? What would have been $40 on the 3DS is now $60. Nintendo tricked the entire world into spending $60, now $70, for 3DS games. So where does this leave us? Did we learn anything at all from the past decade and a half? Doesn't seem like it. Apple now has their own subscription service called Apple Arcade, and it's home to exclusive games like No Way Home and a hack and slash from Platinum Games called World of Demons. Actually, I used to be home to these games. They were both pulled from the service and are now impossible to play. Mistwalker made an amazing homage to classic turn-based RPGs called Fantasian. I love this game, but it's exclusive to Apple Arcade, and as of now, it's still on there, but at a moment's notice, Apple can snap their fingers, pull the game from the store, and it'll be erased. This game, made by industry veterans, whose levels consist of real-life, handcrafted dioramas, is at risk of becoming extinct. It's like an animal. It's an endangered species because the gaming industry doesn't care about preserving its games. All these years of effort flush down the toilet. That's the state of mobile gaming. Games that you buy will be taken from you and you can't do anything about it. Games you don't own but still spend thousands of dollars on will have their servers shut down so you can never play them again. And games like Chaos Rings will be forgotten, left to rot in the darkest corner of the internet until some dedicated fan throws together some bits of code to get the series to work on a barely functioning emulator so that a fan years down the line can reminisce about the better times.